Moving to a new town and trying to make friends can be one of the most daunting experiences for people like me, who struggle with social interactions. Unfortunately, I've always been a bit on the awkward side, and I don't shy away from admitting that. When my job required me to move hundreds of miles away from my hometown, it was a bittersweet moment. While I was excited about the opportunity and the substantial pay, leaving behind familiar faces and the comfort of home was saddening. My logic was to seize the chance, work hard, and return to my hometown after my contract ended, hopefully a few years down the line. However, the first month in my new town proved to be tougher than I anticipated. After work, I often found myself retreating to my new home, indulging in video games and binge-watching shows to fill the void left by the absence of friends. But as expected, loneliness gradually crept in, manifesting its ugly head. I yearned for companionship and a sense of belonging. In my quest to find solace and distraction, I stumbled upon a comic book store not too far from my new house. This discovery brought a glimmer of excitement to my otherwise mundane routine. You see, one thing about me is that I have always been enamored with comics, especially Marvel. My fascination with these illustrated stories dated back to a time before I could even read. I would find myself mesmerized by the captivating covers of my brother's comics, not yet grasping the words they held. While the comic book store couldn't cure my loneliness entirely, it offered me a comforting escape. I started frequenting the store a couple of times a week, reigniting my love for all my favorite comics. It was during one of these visits that my life took an unexpected turn. As I was perusing the new comic book section, my eyes fell upon the latest Fantastic Four comic. Just as I reached for it, an intriguing-looking man approached me. He was tall and incredibly skinny, sporting thick black glasses and shoulder-length blonde hair. His beard was unkempt and patchy, and though he seemed unique in appearance, there was an undeniable charm about him. Thinking he wanted to access the same section, I moved aside, but to my surprise, he wanted to strike up a conversation. With a thick Southern accent, he asked, "Hey, man, you a fan of the Fantastic Four?" I couldn't help but smile and nod, though I must admit I'm not the best at random interactions like this. "You're gonna love it. It really knows how to ride the F4 name. Name's Pete, by the way, not Peter Parker, though," he added with a chuckle. I joined in the laughter, understanding the Spider-Man reference. Extending my hand, I replied, "Nice to meet you, Pete. I'm your name." From that peculiar and somewhat awkward interaction, a new friendship began to blossom. Pete and I started hanging out regularly, chatting about our shared interests in comics, Star Wars, video games, and all things nerdy. It was as if fate had brought us together, and we quickly became inseparable. Weeks turned into months, and Pete became my confidant and go-to person for geeky conversations. He was like a long-lost friend I never knew I needed, and his company brought immense joy to my life. However, it wasn't long before things took a rather peculiar and unsettling turn. Pete began emulating me in small, odd ways. He started dressing like me, occasionally wearing shirts I owned. He even made an enigmatic comment about us being from different multiverses, as if it were a joke or an elaborate reference to our shared love for comics. Initially, I laughed it off, considering it another quirky aspect of our friendship. But the unease began to grow, like a lingering cloud in the back of my mind. I couldn't shake off the strange feeling that something was off. Pete's mannerisms, the way he talked, and even his appearance started to change. He wasn't the Pete I first met at the comic book store. However, I tried to convince myself that my doubts were unfounded, just products of my overactive imagination. One fateful day, after an especially enjoyable time at the comic book store, Pete mentioned, "You know, I was thinking, it's like you're me, but from the multiverse." This time, the comment felt different, as if he wasn't playfully referencing comic book lore. It sent a shiver down my spine. Trying to divert the conversation, I brushed it off. "Haha, that's a wild thought, Pete. Anyway, what do you feel like having for dinner tonight?" As the days passed, I couldn't help but dwell on Pete's unsettling words. There was something amiss, something that went beyond mere coincidence or jokes about parallel universes. It was like a puzzle, and each piece of the mystery fit in strangely with the other. One evening, while getting ready to leave for work, I noticed a car parked outside my home that looked eerily similar to Pete's. My anxiety soared, and I hesitated for a moment before leaving. I tried to reason with myself, believing that I was being paranoid, but something deep within urged me to stay cautious. At work, I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. My mind raced with all sorts of thoughts and scenarios, and it was affecting my ability to focus on my tasks. I finally mustered the courage to ask my supervisor if I could leave early, citing that I wasn't feeling well. Thankfully, she understood and granted my request. When I reached my home, I sensed that something was off. The front door, which I always locked, was slightly ajar. My heart pounded in my chest as I cautiously entered, trying not to make a sound. I followed the faint noises coming from my office, where I kept my most valuable possessions, including my rarest comics and important documents. Peering through the cracked door, my worst fears were confirmed. There was Pete, rummaging through my belongings. I confronted him, demanding an explanation for his actions. He stuttered and tried to come up with an excuse, claiming he was searching for a certain comic to surprise me. But deep down, I knew that was a lie. I surveyed the room, and my suspicions grew stronger. Drawers were pulled open, and my computer was left on, displaying personal information I never left out in the open. There, beside Pete, was a box containing some of my rarest and most valuable comics, worth thousands of dollars, along with personal financial documents. Before I could fully process what was happening, Pete's demeanor shifted drastically. He discarded the Southern accent and revealed himself to be someone entirely different from the person I thought I knew. His motives became clear, and my worst fears were realized. In a sudden and violent outburst, Pete grabbed a nearby lamp and hurled it at me. It struck me on the head, leaving me momentarily stunned and in pain. Before I could regain my composure, he landed a heavy punch to my face, causing me to collapse to the ground. As I struggled to get back on my feet, I heard the sound of his car starting outside, and he sped away, taking my valuable comics and documents with him. I quickly dialed the police, reporting the incident and providing them with whatever information I had on Pete. But it was apparent that Pete wasn't who he claimed to be, and I didn't even know his real name. We had only communicated through text messages, and he seemed to use a disposable phone that was untraceable. The police informed me that Pete had likely targeted me intentionally, gaining my trust to exploit me and steal my valuables. The loss of my prized comics hit me hard, not just because of their monetary value, but because of the sentimental attachment I had to them. In the days that followed, I managed to recover one of my comics from a pawn shop, which offered a glimpse of hope. However, the rest of my collection remained missing, and the thief's true identity continued to elude me. It was a painful reminder of the sinister intentions some people can hide beneath a friendly facade. This harrowing experience left me feeling vulnerable and cautious, reevaluating the people I allowed into my life. It served as a stark reminder that we must always remain vigilant, even with those we consider close friends, as appearances can be deceiving and trust can be exploited. As I move forward, I have learned to be more cautious and discerning about the people I allow into my life. While I will continue to pursue my passions for comics and other nerdy interests, I'll also keep my guard up, ensuring that I don't fall victim to such deceit again. The incident was a harsh lesson, but one that has made me stronger and more vigilant in navigating the complex web of friendships and connections in this world. I must begin by expressing my sincere apology for any potential irregularities in my writing style as I attempt to articulate the situation that is weighing heavily on my mind. Seeking your valuable advice, I find myself grappling with a complex and concerning issue concerning my current relationship with my girlfriend of nearly a decade. Our love story began during our senior year of high school, and we have remained together ever since. Despite navigating the challenges of attending separate colleges, we managed to sustain our bond and eventually moved in together after graduation. Our journey has been filled with joy and happiness, but lately I have noticed troubling changes in my girlfriend's demeanor, leaving me worried and uncertain about the future. Desperate to find answers, I confided in some close friends, hoping they could shed some light on the situation. Yet their assumptions revolved around the usual suspects. They speculated that she might be involved with someone else, engaging in drug use, or perhaps, worst of all, falling out of love with me. Nevertheless, deep down, I could not bring myself to accept any of these explanations. There was an unshakable feeling that something much more profound and troubling was at play here. An elusive darkness she seemed determined to conceal. One incident stands out in my memory, haunting me with its enigmatic implications. Returning home early from work one day, I was greeted by the sound of her distress in the shower. In a state of concern, I knocked on the bathroom door, and for a brief moment, the outpouring of her anger and frustration ceased. It was as if she had put on a mask to conceal her true emotions. When she finally responded, she assured me that everything was fine, but the anxiety and tension on her face told a different story. The following morning, while showering, I noticed something peculiar on the ledge where we kept the soap bottles. Upon closer inspection, it appeared to be dried blood, and upon lifting the bottle, a sinister red ring had formed beneath it. Further investigation revealed dried residue scattered in the nooks and crannies of the shower area. An uneasy feeling gnawed at me, but I could not decipher the cause behind these unsettling discoveries. Adding to my unease, I observed a peculiar change in my girlfriend's social circle. A new acquaintance named Shauna, whose presence I found disconcerting, became more involved in her life. Shauna's unsettling stories about her past exploits and misadventures only fueled my discomfort. On one fateful day when I returned home, I found my girlfriend and Shauna acting strangely, and my suspicions grew when they hurriedly closed a laptop upon my arrival. It was evident that they were concealing something, but I couldn't ascertain what exactly. As the days passed, my girlfriend's behavior deteriorated progressively. The vibrant and bubbly woman I once knew had become a mere shell of her former self. Laughter and smiles vanished, intimacy waned, and she seemed detached from reality. Curiously, her shoes were consistently muddy, her phone often turned off, and her computer mysteriously broke shortly after I stumbled upon the peculiar laptop incident. Shauna's presence seemed to amplify my girlfriend's unease and withdrawal. Their interactions raised alarming questions, but my attempts to delve deeper into the matter were met with resistance. Denying any romantic involvement, my girlfriend grew increasingly defensive and distant. Her eyes, once a familiar window to her soul, now mirrored an enigmatic void. My apprehension escalated when Shauna abruptly departed, leaving my girlfriend pale and disoriented. As I sought reassurance regarding her well-being, her response was cryptic and unsettling. "I will be soon, Shauna. It doesn't matter. I promise I will be soon," she mumbled incoherently. This statement has haunted me ever since, as I struggle to decipher its meaning. In a state of desperation, I reluctantly found myself crossing boundaries that I never thought I would. Feeling compelled to understand the truth behind her change in behavior, I decided to explore the mysterious laptop. To my astonishment, her last search was focused on purchasing weapons from an obscure and suspicious website. This discovery was profoundly disturbing, as my girlfriend was always known for her anti-gun and anti-weapon stance. It was a profound departure from her true character. Further probing into the laptop's search history led to even more troubling revelations. I stumbled upon numerous news articles about missing individuals and obscure web pages, seemingly providing directions to remote and desolate locations. Fear and anxiety began to consume me, and I could no longer dismiss the possibility of something malevolent lurking beneath the surface. As time wore on, my girlfriend's condition only worsened. She became increasingly detached from reality, resembling a soul lost in the void of her mind. All attempts to reach her emotionally proved futile, and I felt a sense of helplessness engulf me. A few days ago, I witnessed Shauna's final appearance at our home. As I returned from work, I found her car parked outside, engine running, and packed with luggage. Entering the house, I was met with an aura of tension and anger. I exchanged glances with my girlfriend before Shauna stormed out of the house and sped away. My girlfriend, drained of all vitality, slumped on the couch. One last time, I implored her to open up, to share the burden that seemed to consume her soul, but her response offered no solace. The eyes that once sparkled with life and love now gazed at me, distant and unrecognizable. Confused and heartbroken, I tried to fathom the mystery surrounding her. The possibility of a romantic entanglement between her and Shauna haunted my thoughts, but she vehemently denied any such involvement, leaving me grappling with uncertainty. At this point, I feel like I'm clutching at straws, hoping and praying that my girlfriend will eventually overcome whatever darkness has taken hold of her. I am left tormented by the fear that she might have done something terrible. I implore anyone reading this to offer their insights, advice, or support, as I feel utterly helpless and lost in the face of this enigmatic and distressing situation. During the early chapters of my life, I found myself walking on the darker path of the law, entangled in illegal activities that I now deeply regret. The pursuit of education was cut short as I made the fateful decision to drop out of high school in the 11th grade. It's a choice that has haunted me ever since. By the time I reached the age of 20, I had already been arrested for the first time, and little did I know that it would be just the beginning of a tumultuous journey with the law. My 20s were marked by a constant cycle of incarceration and release, making it feel like a perpetual struggle against my own demons. However, as my 30th birthday approached, I felt a stirring within my soul, urging me to seek a new direction in life. The stark realization of my lack of true friends and a clear purpose pushed me to explore different churches and community clubs, hoping to discover the path that was meant for me. It was during this quest for meaning that I encountered Barry, and he became the guiding light that I never knew I needed. Barry, a peculiar character in this story, identified as agnostic despite his regular attendance at church events. He explained that it was the strong sense of community and the warmth of the people that drew him to these gatherings. His presence was like a beacon of light, emanating positivity and compassion to all who crossed his path. He had a profound impact on those around him, including church officials who admired his selflessness and kindness, even if his views on faith differed. For me, the connection with Barry was instantaneous, and his boundless benevolence drew me closer to him. He was a tireless giver, offering not only his time and effort, but also donating clothes, food, and money to help the less fortunate. His seemingly infinite resources allowed him to extend his generosity beyond the church's boundaries, reaching deep into the low-income areas of the city to provide aid in any way possible. In the midst of my search for meaning, I found a purpose in working alongside Barry. There was no judgment in his character, only acceptance and encouragement. He took me under his wing, and together, we became a force for good in the community. It felt as though my past transgressions no longer mattered. All that counted was the person I had become in the present. Our partnership blossomed, and over the course of several years, we became true friends. Barry's compassion and caring nature knew no bounds. When I found myself without a place to live, he graciously opened his small guest house to me, making me feel like family. We embarked on our daily routines, rising early each day to embark on our mission to help those in need. And he funded it all. His financial resources seemed never-ending, but I never questioned its source. Then, one fateful afternoon, everything changed. I noticed a stark difference in Barry's demeanor. The energy that once fueled him seemed dimmed, replaced by an aura of agitation and distress. It was as if he had become a stranger to himself. I couldn't ignore the shift in his behavior, and my concern for my dear friend grew. That night, as we headed back to his house, I mustered the courage to inquire about his well-being. When I asked if he was all right, he let out a deep breath, sighed, and muttered a dismissive assurance that he was fine. Something was clearly amiss, and the atmosphere between us felt charged with tension. Later that evening, I found myself gazing out of the window of the guest house that stood just a few yards behind Barry's residence. His lights were on, and the blinds were drawn, offering a glimpse into the house. From that vantage point, I observed him frantically pacing around the room, seemingly engaged in a heated phone conversation. It was a side of Barry I had never witnessed before. The anger and rage in his voice were utterly foreign to the calm and composed person I knew. As curiosity and worry gripped me, I inched closer to the house, hoping to eavesdrop on the conversation to better understand the turmoil consuming my friend. The words I heard sent chills down my spine. Barry was venting his frustration and demanding that someone accomplish a task immediately. He spoke of escaping some kind of hell, leaving me with more questions than answers. Suddenly, he hung up the phone and hurled it against the wall in a fit of anger. At that moment, our eyes met through the window, and I instinctively recoiled, fearing that my presence had been discovered. I sought refuge on the side of the house, my heart pounding in my chest, hoping he hadn't seen me. I lay still, praying for his departure and for the tumultuous storm within him to subside. Moments later, the front door swung open, and there stood Barry, yelling my name into the night, his voice filled with anger and betrayal. I couldn't find the words to explain my actions. Fear had silenced me. He pounced, grabbing the collar of my flannel shirt and pushing me against the house. Rage emanated from him, and with each furious word, droplets of spittle landed on my cheek. He accused me of attempting to steal his money, of betraying his trust, and spying on his personal affairs. My mind raced, desperately trying to formulate a response, but I remained silent, my mind grappling with the onslaught of emotions. In one swift motion, he threw me to the ground and continued his tirade. It was a horrifying realization that this person, who had shown me such kindness and acceptance, could unleash such fury and violence. I felt vulnerable, terrified, and utterly defenseless. The world around me blurred as he kicked me in the face, leaving me dazed, seeing stars. As I struggled to regain my composure and rise to my feet, he pushed me down again, his voice hoarse from shouting. The pain was excruciating, both physical and emotional, as I absorbed the unexpected betrayal from a person I had come to trust so deeply. When I attempted to stand again, he delivered a kick that reverberated through my entire being, leaving me disoriented and questioning my fate. With an air of finality, he ordered me to stay put before storming back into his house, slamming the door behind him. I lay there, breathless and broken, grappling with the reality of the situation. What had transpired to trigger such a drastic change in my once compassionate and gentle friend? The answer eluded me as I lay there, waiting and hoping for his departure. Gathering what little strength remained in me, I finally managed to pull myself up. I stole a glance through the window, witnessing Barry rummaging through a chest in the room. He seemed to be searching for something, but the context remained elusive. It sounded like he was handling something long and narrow, though I couldn't discern its exact nature. Fear urged me to escape, to flee from the threat that had suddenly materialized within the walls of my trusted friend's home. I raced back to the guest house, hastily gathering my few belongings, and sought refuge in the cover of the woods that bordered Barry's property. Hidden in the tree line, I watched as Barry wandered around the guest house, his earlier rage still simmering beneath the surface. Eventually, he broke down the door, searching for me and calling out my name in a fit of fury. It was then that I knew I couldn't stay any longer. My safety was at stake, and I needed to find help. I navigated the dense forest, my heart pounding, praying that he wouldn't discover my escape route. Eventually, I reached the road and sprinted to a nearby convenience store, seeking assistance from the bewildered clerks. As I gasped for breath, I implored them to call the police, as I didn't have a phone at the time. In due course, the police arrived, and I poured out my story, recounting the events that had transpired. unsure of what they could do but hopeful that they would protect me from the threat that now loomed over me. Their presence offered some comfort, yet anxiety and uncertainty still gnawed at my every thought. The authorities responded promptly, heading to Barry's residence to address the situation. Before long, I learned that he had been arrested. Curiosity led me to search for information about his case, but to my surprise, I found nothing. It was as though Barry had vanished from the records, making me wonder if Barry was merely an alias, and if the person I had come to know was hiding a darker secret. In the aftermath of that night, my mind remained tormented with unanswered questions. What was Barry involved in? What had triggered his sudden outburst of rage and violence? Did he intend to harm me further, or was he just caught up in his own internal turmoil? The experience left me with a profound lesson, that sometimes those who appear to be the best among us might be concealing the darkest secrets. The face that people present to the world may hide the struggles and darkness they carry within. Despite the pain and confusion, I know that I was fortunate to escape that night with my life, a stark reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and we must remain vigilant in our search for truth and authenticity. The memory of Barry's seemingly benevolent facade haunted me, leaving me with a thirst for answers that may never come. In retrospect, I deeply regret not paying closer attention to the warning signs about Wyatt, the romantic partner who would eventually turn my life upside down. Many of us have experienced painful relationships in the past, but I could have never fathomed the extent of the danger that lay ahead when I first met Wyatt. From the very beginning, he appeared to be everything one could wish for in a partner: charming, witty, and exuding a level of attractiveness that turned heads wherever he went. Tall with an athletic build, a hint of rugged scruff on his face, and a smile that could light up the room, Wyatt was objectively, undeniably handsome. It wasn't just his appearance that captivated people. He possessed an extraordinarily likable personality that made him instantly connect with anyone he met. As we went on a few dates, I appreciated all the qualities that made him appealing, but somehow a special connection eluded me. We discussed our feelings openly, and to my relief, Wyatt was understanding and accepting of my hesitations. We decided to remain friends and gradually drifted apart in terms of dating. However, we grew incredibly close as friends over the following months, sharing the ups and downs of our love lives and offering each other advice. In my life, Wyatt became an irreplaceable friend, someone I treasured deeply and valued more than any other friendship at that point. Time went by, and life took its course. Wyatt eventually started seeing someone else, and gradually our communication dwindled until one day he disappeared entirely. No social media presence, and his phone number was no longer in service. Despite the drifting, I still held a fondness for him in my heart and would sometimes see him at bars, even if we didn't interact as much as before. Then one unforgettable Friday night, everything changed. The bar's doors swung open dramatically, and there he was, Wyatt, just as handsome as ever. I couldn't contain my excitement and instantly left the group I was conversing with to give him the biggest hug. It felt like being reunited with the old Wyatt, the one I had cherished as a close friend before circumstances drove us apart. However, as I look back on that night, there was something peculiar that I should have noticed. Wyatt never approached the bar to order a drink, and it struck me as a little odd, though I brushed it aside at the time. Instead, we talked the night away, catching up on everything we had missed, and it was as if no time had passed between us. In a twist of fate, that night also marked a turning point in our relationship. For the first time in all the years I had known him, Wyatt and I shared a kiss that opened the door to more dates. It seemed that life had aligned our paths once more, and I found myself giving him a chance beyond the friend zone. Perhaps my recent emotional vulnerability, stemming from a recent breakup, played a part in this decision, making me more open to the idea of exploring something deeper with him. As we officially started dating, I couldn't help but notice subtle changes in Wyatt's behavior. He seemed unenthusiastic about going to our favorite bar, which struck me as unusual. Nonetheless, I respected his preferences, assuming that he simply had different tastes when it came to entertainment venues. One night, my friends wanted to gather at our usual bar, and I informed Wyatt of my plans. To my surprise, he appeared nervous, but he finally agreed that it was fine for me to go without him. I never considered myself one of those people who needed to be with their partner 24/7, so I thought nothing of it and met my friends at the bar around 9:30 p.m. As I approached the bar to order a drink, I noticed the bartender's reaction. She looked at me with disdain, avoiding eye contact as she hesitantly took my order, and then returned with my drink. It was perplexing, as I couldn't think of anything I had done to offend her. Still, I brushed it off, not wanting to let any negativity ruin my night with friends. Throughout the evening, I would occasionally glance over at the bar and catch the bartender staring at me intently. It felt a bit unsettling, but I chalked it up to a coincidence, or perhaps my imagination playing tricks on me. However, as the night wore on, I decided to use the restroom before Wyatt came to pick me up, and what happened next would change everything. As I washed my hands in the restroom, the bartender unexpectedly entered and locked the door behind her. Fear gripped me as I wondered if I was about to face some kind of attack. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she asked if I was Gina, seeking confirmation, to which I hesitantly nodded. What she revealed next would shatter any sense of security I had left. The bartender proceeded to tell me that she used to date Wyatt a couple of years ago. Her voice trembled with nervousness as she shared a spine-chilling revelation. Wyatt had an unhealthy obsession with me during their relationship, constantly comparing her to me, saying things like, "Why can't you be more like Gina?" Or "Gina would do it like this." He even uttered the unforgivable words, "When I'm with Gina, I could hate you." To my shock, she disclosed that she had found countless pictures of me on Wyatt's computer, images taken surreptitiously without my knowledge. These pictures spanned various moments of my life, from me driving to walking, and even pictures of me during dates or inside my own house. Confronting Wyatt about this violation had led to a hostile reaction, with him deleting all the evidence, threatening her, and disappearing from town. I was overwhelmed by a mix of emotions: disbelief, fear, anger, and confusion. Could this really be true? Could the person I knew so well and considered a close friend have committed such an invasive and horrifying act? When the bartender asked if I was dating Wyatt, I felt a sudden surge of defensiveness. Could she be jealous, trying to sabotage our relationship? I questioned why she hadn't reported this to the police, but she didn't provide a clear answer, adding to the uncertainty surrounding her story. Still, her emotions appeared genuine, and the evidence she mentioned hinted at something deeply sinister. Despite my doubts, I thanked her for her concern and exited the restroom. As I returned to my friends, I couldn't shake off the unsettling feeling inside me. Part of me wanted to believe that this bartender had misunderstood or exaggerated the situation. After all, this didn't align with the person I knew Wyatt to be. But another part of me couldn't ignore the gravity of the revelation and the alarming intensity in the bartender's eyes. When Wyatt arrived to pick me up, I hesitated to bring up the conversation, fearing his reaction. However, I mustered the courage and recounted everything the bartender had shared. His initial response was silence, as if he was searching for the right words to say. Then, instead of outright denial, he uttered words that sent a chill down my spine. "I just love you so much, Gina." My heart pounded in my chest as I absorbed his words, the implication sinking in. Could it be true? Did he really have such an obsession with me that it led him to invade my privacy in such a sinister way? Before I could process his admission fully, something even more horrifying happened. Without warning, Wyatt started driving recklessly, accelerating to alarming speeds. Panic and terror gripped me as I pleaded with him to stop the car, but he seemed to be on a mission. The stretch of highway we were on had a sharp turn up ahead, but instead of slowing down, Wyatt drove straight ahead, crashing through the guardrail. As the windshield shattered and we rolled down a massive hill, my life flashed before my eyes. The adrenaline rush was intense, and I blacked out for a moment. When I regained consciousness, Wyatt was unconscious behind the wheel, and I was bleeding from my head, but surprisingly coherent. I quickly grabbed my phone and dialed 911, desperate for help. The emergency responders arrived swiftly and attended to my injuries. As they extricated Wyatt from the wreckage, he began to regain consciousness, but he appeared groggy and disoriented. An ambulance rushed him to the hospital for further examination. Amidst the chaos, I recounted the night's events to the police, detailing how my boyfriend had intentionally driven off the road at a dangerously high speed. I shared the bartender's story, revealing the alarming allegations about the pictures he had taken of me without my knowledge or consent. To my dismay, the police response to the picture allegations seemed tepid at best. They didn't seem to take it as seriously as I did, leaving me with a sense of frustration and vulnerability. I couldn't help but wonder if they truly understood the gravity of this invasion of privacy and potential violation of the law. Despite my doubts and the lack of immediate action, I pressed charges against Wyatt for the reckless driving incident. It was clear that he posed a significant danger to me, and I couldn't stand by silently, knowing what he had done. As the legal process unfolded, I enlisted the help of someone to investigate the alleged pictures and determine the truth behind the disturbing revelation. Looking back, I can't help but feel haunted by the realization that I should have heeded the warning the bartender tried to share with me. I allowed my emotions and past friendship to cloud my judgment, making me blind to the potential dangers lurking within the person I thought I knew so well. Thankfully, I survived that harrowing night, but the scars, both physical and emotional, will stay with me forever. As Wyatt faces the consequences of his reckless actions, I hope justice will prevail, not just for the dangerous driving, but also for any potential crimes related to the alleged pictures. I never imagined that someone I had known for so long, someone I trusted as a friend, could be capable of such horrors. For now, Wyatt remains behind bars, and I'm working tirelessly with authorities to ensure that any evidence of the pictures is thoroughly examined, and if warranted, he will be held accountable for those actions as well. I'm determined to protect myself and others from potential harm, and I hope my ordeal serves as a stark reminder to trust our instincts and heed warning signs, no matter how inconceivable they may seem at first.